Good morning. My name's Mike Troy. I'll be your host for today's webinar. I'm the editor of Retail Leader, and our topic today is disconnected retail. It's a title that stems from a major research project Forrester conducted that was commissioned by Revionics, and it probes retailer assumptions around pricing and promotional activity, what works, what doesn't, how retailers' views differ from shopper reality in this crazy world we're living in now of retail. Lots of change going on. So it's an extremely important topic, and it has huge implications for the way retailers connect with shoppers. And it's growing increasingly complex, and that complexity is introducing all sorts of new challenges and potential for things to go wrong or right, especially when it comes to promotional effectiveness and pricing. And, there's still some big challenges in those areas, even though we, have these amazing new precision targeting abilities. So we have this awesome topic, and we have two supremely qualified people with us today to address it. Both are passionate and knowledgeable about what is happening in the retail world at large, and more importantly, what needs to happen going forward for retailers to capitalize on new opportunities. So here's how we're going to go today. First up will be Brendan Witcher. His name may be familiar to some folks. He's a very well-known analyst with Forrester Research. He's a vice president and principal analyst with Forrester. He's focused on digital business strategy and is really regarded as an expert on e-commerce business, consumer behavior, and technology trends in the world of digital engagement. Brendan does a lot of research on consumer-oriented cross-vertical topics such as e-commerce trends, personalization, omni-channel, customer experience management best practices, engagement strategies, and conversion optimization. He's an authority on technology developments that affect both online and offline commerce industries, as well as the vendors that help deliver today's leading strategies and tactics in digital excellence. And he spends much of his time consulting with companies that are at the forefront of dealing with digital disruption. And then following Brendan will be Cheryl Sullivan. Cheryl's Chief Marketing and Strategy Officer with Revionics. Revionics is a leading provider of pricing and promotion solutions. And I've had the good fortune a couple of times this year and last of, executing a few of these webinars with Cheryl. And you won't find a more passionate person when it comes to these sort of topics. Generally, it seems to really bother her to see retailers waste promotional dollars, and that will come through when you hear her presentation. Cheryl's been in the retail technology and CPG world for about 30 years, the past 8 of those with Revionics. Prior to Revionics, she was the Senior Director of Product Strategy for Oracle Retail. And she's also held senior positions with other notable tech companies such as EMS, Spectra Marketing, Intactics, JDA, and i2 Technologies. Before we get into their presentation, a couple of quick housekeeping items. At the end of the presentation, be sure to take the survey, and you will possibly win a Starbucks gift card. So take the survey at the end. Also, be sure to ask questions. We're going to cover a lot of complex subject matter, and it's thought-provoking stuff, so be sure to ask questions. I will be back at the end to field those questions and, kind of moderate the conversation. And then lastly, the deck, the presentation will be available. Simply at the end, send an email to Cheryl. Her email is csullivan@revionics.com, and we'll repeat that later, but it's csullivan@revionics.com. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brendan, and we'll get started, and then we'll on to Cheryl, and then I'll be back at the end to ask some questions. Brendan, go ahead.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Hi, everybody. It is great to talk to you today. No matter where you are in the world, maybe it's good morning, good evening, Good afternoon, possibly. So it's a fun topic to talk about this. I was excited about Revionics taking on this project. I think it's a fascinating world, and it really does align to a lot of things that are going on in the retail space today. I want to start off by just sharing with you a little bit of an exercise that I do normally in person. I don't normally do this on webinars, but I think it's really important to note this really interesting survey that I do. I'll stand on stage and I'll ask the audience to close their eyes and imagine themselves going into a grocery store. And they go in to do a week's worth of grocery shopping, and they look around and they realize when they get there that there are none of these items here. These are, of course, three-dimensional shopping carts. Hopefully most of you still recognize them. So there are none of these, and I don't mean they're all being used. I mean there are literally no shopping carts. And so I asked the audience to imagine walking up to the manager and asking, what happened to all the shopping carts? And the manager says to the person, we couldn't figure out the ROI of a shopping cart, so we decided to get rid of them. Right? I mean, it probably sounds familiar to some of you, especially in the retail space. I'm an ex-retailer myself. So we couldn't figure it out, so we got rid of them. And I asked the audience how they feel, and they're all frustrated and sad and confused and lots of things. But then I asked the audience two very important questions. They say, well, how many of you would continue shopping with a grocer that didn't provide a shopping cart? And I've now presented this to over 30,000 people. And not once have I ever had anyone raise their hands, except at a grocery conference once. I didn't think that one through. But other than that, I haven't had anyone raise their hands and say I would continue shopping, right? So then I ask them another question. I say, how many experiences did this grocer mess up on, and you're willing to abandon them? You're willing to walk away, to leave. And of course, they say one experience. So what is the value of a shopping cart? But said another way, what is the value of getting that experience right? I would argue it's everything. It's everything today. And by the way, I also point out another thing to the audience at this point in the speech, which is that grocer has every single item you need, every single item you want, and yet you were willing to walk away. Why is that? It's because we know we have choice. We are digitally savvy consumers, whether it's a shirt or a coffee maker or a diamond ring or a car or whatever. We know we have choice. In the past, we didn't know that. Now we do. And that's what's causing us to say we don't have to stick with you. In other words, if you don't get the experience right, and in some cases, if you don't get one experience right, consumers are going to walk away regardless of the products that you carry. It's all about the experience. That's why we're in this state today of hyper adoption and hyper abandonment. I'm sure many of you have Facebook accounts, whether you admit it or not. Yet very few of you still maintain your MySpace account. Many of you probably have Netflix, right? That's hyper adoption. And I'm sure your Blockbuster card is somewhere sitting in a drawer somewhere that you haven't used in many years. In fact, when I ask people, like, for example, about Uber, do you use Uber? Nearly half the hands go up. This is hyper adoption, hyper abandonment. And what's going on is getting these experiences right. Now, one thing I also point out to organizations, retailers, that's very important to understand as you go through the flow of what we're going to show you today is to realize that each time a consumer is exposed to an improved shopping experience, their expectations for all shopping experiences are reset to a new higher level. Now, note, I don't say your competitors' shopping experiences. I'm not saying you need to look at your competitors, because I see retailers making the mistake all the time. Well, our competitor doesn't do that. Our competitor has different pricing here, and they do this. Well, okay, great. But as consumers, we don't think that way, right? Like I always make the argument, if you go to a banking website and you can find what you need, you can use a virtual agent to ask a question, you're completely happy. But then you go to an insurance website and you have to call someone to get an answer, you can't find the information you want, you're instantly disappointed. It has nothing to do with comparing you to another insurance company. It's comparing you to the last digital experience. Right? And so you can't just do that. You're not behind your competitors, you're behind your customers' expectations today. And unfortunately, those expectations are unique. I have lots of stats at Forrester. I could have thrown any number up here. It doesn't really matter. This is 1%. Most of you probably have guessed that. But what's the most important word on this slide is satisfactory. The most important word on the slide is satisfactory, because for each of us, satisfactory is defined by our needs and what we want. For some of us, I want this promotion to be good anywhere. I want the same price. I want my pricing personalized. I want, non-pricing elements like same-day delivery or buy online, pick up in store, or I want to be able to use comparison charts or see content through a video. each of us has our own satisfaction triggers. And I know people would love for Forrester to come out and say, there's a silver bullet. There is no silver bullet because there's not one kind of customer. They're the ones determining this today. This is the age of the customer. They're in charge. And so the crux of what we're going to show you today is how you really have to align understanding the customer with your business strategy, because I see this image you see in front of you right here materialize in retailers all the time. They're doing the right things, kind of, but they're really not aligning it to the right customers and understanding the customers and understanding how these things are applied. So you can be checking all the boxes that you think you should be doing, but if you don't really understand your customers or what's actually going on in the market, that's where you're going to fall apart. And this, as an analyst for the last 5 years, is exactly why I see companies struggling, why some do well and some do poorly. Now, we're going to get into the study methodology that we got into here, and this is the fun part, right? So this is the work we do with Revionics. They commissioned us to do the study, and we conducted surveys with 224 retailers from the U.S., UK, France, Germany, and Brazil. And I want to share with you a little bit of what they look like. There were, of course, C-suite executives, vice presidents, directors, even managers in there. Of course, you know, the bulk of them, the majority actually sit with this mid-range people, but of course we have mixes from the top and bottom, and of course they have to have responsibilities and promotions and pricing. As you can see, we were diligent about making sure that they were involved in that. So these weren't warehouse people asking pricing questions. So good methodology, solid research. One thing that I do want to do as I'm going through this presentation with you today here, though, is to remind you pricing can't be looked at in a silo. So what I'm going to do is kind of reference, as I go through this survey findings, some of the things that are going on in retail as well, the top initiatives that are going on, and how pricing really does tie to these things. If this is the way your business is organized, you're thinking wrong about pricing right out of the gate. Right? You need to understand, yes, I need to understand how pricing affects this, but I also think I have to think holistically about how this affects the other parts of my organization, because you need to be enterprise-wide. You need to be strategic about this, not just tactical. So let's get into a few of those things and talk about the survey results we found. The first thing that we find is a lot of companies are doing is omnichannel. Now, for retailers and sometimes for brands, a lot of them think of omnichannel as fulfillment, but the reality is there's 4 pillars to omnichannel. There's view of the customer, there's engagement, there's fulfillment, and of course, there's product and price, right? Customer sees consistent content, price, and promotions. So as you're thinking about your omnichannel strategy, you may be on the pricing team or the merchandising team or what have you, but if there's a team out there that's working on fulfillment or working on an omnichannel initiative, you know, go to them and say, wait a minute, what are you focusing on? Do you have these 4 pillars in your strategy and in your vision, in your roadmap? And I'm going to share with you a little bit what we found when it comes to tying omnichannel to that. Or pricing to omnichannel. Retailers think they can get away with not providing omnichannel pricing to today's digitally savvy consumers. As I said earlier, it's a shopping cart thing. It's like, I know I have choice, so don't get it wrong, right? So they'll say things like, well, we market our price matching policy and guarantee to encourage customers to take advantage of it as an added value. 76%. 3 out of 4 organizations. And we see it in the market, right? Here's some examples of that. Price promises, price match guarantees. We'll also see that happen in promotions, right? So these are in-store promotions. Here you've got like online-only promotions right here. We're trying to get customers to behave in the way that we want them to behave. We all talk about being customer obsessed, and then we do this to customers. Well, let's talk about that price matching. You know, 76% said, you know, we rely on that. Well, only 17% of shoppers say, I demand price matching, right? 17% say they're going to be looking for that price matching. I know I have choice. If you don't give me the price right up front, well, you know what? I can just move on. Your competitors are now a click away. You know, what does that mean? Well, let's take the inverse of 17% and say that 83% of your shoppers are now at risk. You're not going to save those sales through your price matching policy. I know you think you are, but you're not, right? It's not an if you build it, they will come moment kind of thing, right? So organizations today need to think about that. It is not worth it to lose a customer because you won't honor a price or a promotion, particularly a promotion, in a channel that the customer wants to shop in. You are not being customer obsessed when you say you can only get this deal in stores. You're being company obsessed, not customer obsessed, and you shouldn't confuse the two things. Another initiative we see really hot is personalization. Nearly 90% of digital leaders say we are prioritizing investing in personalizing our customers' experiences, and they do it for good reason. Okay, 77% of consumers say I've chosen, recommended, or paid more for a brand that provides a personalized service or experience. Now, you may say, wow, those are pretty good numbers. No, they are great numbers. As someone who sits around looking at data all day long, I promise you, these are gigantic numbers. We don't see these kinds of numbers all the time. When we look at loyalty programs and other things, we don't see 77%. They respond to it. And so organizations today, as they think about pricing, need to think about, well, how do we personalize the entire customer journey? That includes price. That includes promotion. How do we think about these things? So let's take a look at it for a second. So our survey that we did with Reviox found that, 78% said that arbitrary pricing that shoppers perceive as random or without cause or reason, that would make the majority of our shoppers very angry. So, okay, that's a fair statement. So what are they moving to? Like, well, what's in the data that we found that they're moving to? Well, actually, what we found is that they say they would see better results if they offered personalized pricing. Remember, this is like targeted, so it's not arbitrary, but it's understanding the customer well enough to give that right offer, that right discount, that right item price or service price to the right customer, 77%. So you see how this kind of moves. We're seeing a shift here, right? Like, this is the negative, here's the positive. And, similar to what we saw in the general personalization answers, 65% of shoppers say, I appreciate the prices are personalized to my shopping habits. That's fantastic, right? That's fantastic news. The downside a little bit to all this is that when we actually look at the data and look at what retailers are doing, unfortunately, as our little shopper says here, nearly half of people are not offering personalized pricing to shoppers. So while there's acknowledgement that this is important, both on the retailer side and even openly being expressed by consumers today, the truth of the matter is that a lot of companies still have a ways to go in delivering on that. Now, some of that reason might be because when we ask the question, how do you think your shoppers would feel if someone they know gets a better offer? You can see that they either would say, 32% say they'd be mildly upset, 27% said they would be angry but continue to shop with us, and 18% said they would be very angry and not shop with us again. If you total that up, you're getting to about 77%. 77%. So that's a big hurdle to get over, culturally and organizationally in the way you think about why you might or might not personalize things. So there, you can be reluctant. However, here's the reality. There's a way to do this, and there's an example in the market you can use today. It's Amazon Prime. There is a strategy out there, and you can model yourself up to that. Turn your personal promotions into part of your loyalty proposition, right? Don't just make it personal because you show up. Make it part of your strategy. This isn't pricing related, but just an example you can take away. I was on the phone with a retailer recently and went to their website, and across the top of the website said free shipping, no minimum. And I just asked the question. I said, is that part of your, do you just offer that? They're like, yeah. I go, stop it. Stop doing that. Stop giving things away. Don't do that. Make it part of your loyalty program that your customers won't even have to pay for like they do at Amazon, right? Like, think about how to do that. So if you want to offer specialized pricing, you want to look to a model, look to Amazon. This is exactly what they'll do, right? Prime members get special discounts, special pricing. Then you avoid all that on the left because there is no arbitrary thing. I got a special deal because I'm a member of this program. Oh, now I understand. Now I get it. You're making it clear so that you've kind of eliminated that thing on the left with something on the right. Okay, so think strategically about this. Don't just, wipe your hands of it and say, oh, it's impossible. We don't want to make our customers unhappy. Be strategic about it and apply it in a way that would make sense. Another key theme we see in retail is AI. There is no buzzier buzzword right now than AI, machine learning, all that, right? So it's a big deal. We hear a lot of people talking about it. It made our top 5 list of what retailers are investing in 2018. So that's a big deal for something that hasn't been around very long. But here's what we see. At Forrester, we have data that shows that 81% of leaders who are not ready to invest in AI either feel there is no defined business case or they're unclear what AI can be used for in their business. The reality is when we look at pricing, there's a shift. Like at least pricing people have a good impression of this. They have a vision for it, even if they don't have the exact like ROI or where this will be applied to. When we ask, do you believe that AI data-driven pricing would have a negative, positive impact on your shoppers? The vast majority said yes, it would positively impact our shoppers. So, if you're not one of those, just realize you're in the minority in that belief system at least. The other side of it is, do you believe that frequent price changes due to pricing driven by AI and data science would have an impact on customer behavior? Again, yes, it would positively impact our shoppers. They're tweaked a little bit, but we get generally the same response. And generally, we do find that organizations today, while they don't understand the business case for AI, don't confuse that with not understanding that most retailers feel like AI is the future of customer engagement. Now, here's something I really want you guys to pay attention to, is that AI is not a Monday to Friday activity. If your competitors start using AI to win your customers away from you or to grow in the market like Alibaba and Amazon are already doing, you can't just decide on a Monday and say, you know what, maybe we should get into this AI thing. And by Friday, you're done. Absolutely not. AI is terribly complex. There's lots of vendors out there that are making it easy, and you should use them and lean on them. But I also would encourage you to use them in a way that helps you learn how AI can be utilized, not just in pricing, but across your organization. If you're truly an enterprise organization, you want to think about the fact that AI is just a different way of doing business. So today, some companies say, well, we're not ready for artificial intelligence. We're not ready to let tools and machines do everything for us. That's the wrong impression of AI. Think of AI more as assisted intelligence rather than artificial intelligence. We're not replacing you. We're trying to provide you with insights there's no way you can go and get yourself. I was an analyst at Guitar Center before I did this. I was head of strategy for Guitar Center. And somebody came to me and said, well, what's the best thing we can do? I said, there's no way I can know that, because I can't think of all the possible combinations of things that I should do and variables that would create the best outcome. I can only do what I know to do. So think of artificial intelligence as a companion, right? As a really, really smart data person sitting right next to you at your desk that's helping guide your strategic decision making. It's not replacing your job. It's helping you do it better. But again, time is not on your side. Do not get behind on this. Now is the time to learn what AI can do for your business. And the reason it hit 2015's top list of things that retailers are investing in is because they are recognizing, I may not launch something this year, but I'm certainly not going to launch something next year if I don't learn about it this year, because that's what kind of time it takes to understand. And in some ways, which I'll get to later, help the organization understand why this is important. Now, let's get a little bit into the challenges we found. Now, pricing has more challenges than just being competitive. There's a whole laundry list of them. I'm going to highlight a few of them for you here. One of them that I found, not just in this research, but in the research I've done for a number of years around pricing, is that when it comes to pricing, generally people are leaning on this idea of being able to be competitive. And you're looking at just other retailers, you're looking to extreme price strategies of mega retailers, and just basically becoming more dynamic and adjusting prices more frequently. Well, as assortments get bigger, as prices change, as consumers start digitally engaging you, not once a week at your website, but 4 or 5 times a week on their mobile devices, right? The idea of keeping up with the customer, the idea of being able to do this yourself, you're not going to be able to do it. I promise you, you're not. I know you think you are, but you can't. You need that. You need AI to do these 3 things together. And in total, 82% of retailers selected either remaining competitive, responding to mega retailers, or dynamic pricing changes as a challenge. So overall, AI is going to be a requirement for about 4 out of 5 companies that are using that feel like this is where they need to be pricing their strategy and overcoming these challenges. In addition to that, right near the top of the list is retaining and growing customer loyalty. Now, nearly half of all retailers feel like this is a challenge, and that's not really that surprising, but I want to take a little bit different tact and spin on it, if you don't mind. Retailers believe they have to have the lowest price in order to win loyalty of today's consumers. That we found it in the data. 76% say the majority of our shoppers are looking for the cheapest price, and so what they're doing is they're investing in price, they're saying that price ranks as the highest priority of where shoppers decide to shop, right? They believe this about consumers. So keep that in mind, right? There's 205 people believe that. But right behind it is quality. Everything else kind of falls below that. But I want you to remember something, what I showed you at the beginning of the presentation about experiences, right? If you don't get that experience right, you're not going to win that customer. So while many of you think that price really matters, here's a stat that's quite interesting. 17%, only 17% say, I only buy products at the cheapest price. Only 17%. And that's because we need value. Over 70% of consumers today say the most important thing a company can do to provide me with value or provide me with good service is to value my time. Time is the element we don't have a lot of anymore. We are in short supply of it, surprisingly. Digital has almost made our lives harder, not easier. And so organizations today really need to get to that level of being able to deliver on the price and the quality together. Again, we have data to support this at Forrester. 55% of consumers say it's important to them to get special offers or treatment that isn't available to other customers. And by the way, many of these were loyalty program customers, right? Like they're willing to be part of a loyalty program. They're willing to do that because they want to get that special treatment. They want to get that special offer. That's about quality, right? That's about the quality of it. It's not about the lowest price. It's about knowing what I need, knowing in the context of all the things that I need, how are you delivering the experience? And again, you want a model? Look at Amazon Prime. Most people don't think of Amazon Prime as a loyalty program. It's exactly what it is. It is the biggest loyalty program in the U.S. 100 million people are a member of that paid loyalty program. Because loyalty programs are about getting customers to self-identify, which I think everybody can acknowledge that's what Prime does, and get people to buy more. Well, if you know that Amazon just hit a $1 trillion market cap, I think you're well aware of the sales that Amazon is getting. So mission accomplished for them. Use it as a model and say, hey, we need to use this for pricing, but we need to do it in the context of all the other things we can offer, because having the lowest price isn't always going to win our customers. Less than 1 out of 5 said, I'm looking for the cheapest price, right? So in contrast to some of the things I've shown you so far, we find that when we ask how effective are you at identifying between shoppers that would pay full price versus those who would wait for a discount, for example, like how well do you know customers? 68% said either effective or very effective. So keep that in mind. How good are you at identifying between shoppers that would pay full price versus those who would wait for a discount before they purchase? And then look at this chart. How long do you think most shoppers would wait for a discounted item they want to make? So remember, they think they understand them. Retailers said 90% said they would not wait. They would not wait at all, or they would only wait a month, right? 90%. Yet when we ask consumers, they'll say, half of them would say that's how long I would wait. Half of them, right? Look at the other side. Most retailers, 9%, or very few retailers said they'll wait 2 months or as long as it takes, only 9%. And yet 48% of consumers said I'll wait 2 months or longer or as long as it takes. They're not that impatient. They're really not that impatient. They really aren't sitting there waiting around saying, that's okay. Like, I don't need that. I don't need that lamp right now. I don't need those bananas right now. I don't need that right now. I got other things I can buy. We're always buying things. We're consumer oriented. So just remember that, because a lot of companies today are doing things like, well, the market is, really short on this inventory, so let's raise prices. Okay, interesting strategy, but it's only an interesting strategy in the world where nobody ever gets inventory back in stock. Think about this. You could lose customers very easily when customers say, well, I'm going to wait for this item. And, you can raise the price if you want because your competitor's out of it, but I'm going to sit around and wait for the next 2 months for this to come back in stock. And in that amount of time, I may go shop with somebody else. I may go shop with them. Are you willing to risk that? And so think about that as a strategy. I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm saying really understand what you're doing. Again, this is about aligning customers, your strategy with customer behavior, knowing that half your customers would wait over 2 months. And I would say, as an ex-retailer, most retailers can get things back into stock in 2 months. I mean, hopefully, that's usually the case. Finally, I want to point out one other thing about promotions. This is something that, I know Cheryl's going to talk a little bit about it a little bit later, but wow, it was just such a stark contrast here looking at some of these numbers. When we ask generally what percentage off, we ask retailers, what percentage off are you able to offer promotions to your customers that maximize the value of your marketing campaigns? Look at how many, what 41% are saying 30 to 40%, 45 to 50, or 60%. That's what we need to give away to maximize the value. But let's look over to the left. So depending on the category, 41 to 63% of shoppers said that 10 to 25% would trigger a purchase. 10 to 25%. So remember, the left side isn't the percentages, right? The left side represents the percentages of companies, of retailers who think their sweet spot sits above that 25%. So 41% of retailers, or 2 out of 5 retailers, are over promoting, because your sweet spot isn't going to live where, beyond where 60% of your customers can get triggered off, right? So your sweet spot on incremental revenue by giving away and creating incremental sales lies in that area that you would trigger a purchase. So just remember, you're probably over promoting if you think you're over to the right there for your organization. The last point that I will make here is I've been an analyst for now 5 years, and I was in retail. I was at Guitar Center before this, and then before that I was at Harry & David in marketing. And I can tell you now, with 15 years under my belt in retail, this is absolutely true. As an analyst, I now see it very clearly. I work at the same companies year after year after year. They come to me for advice. I give them advice. Sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. But more importantly, what they don't do is they don't think about the holistic view they need to take on applying their digital strategy, their pricing strategy, their omnichannel strategy. It doesn't really matter. But they don't really think holistically about it. And what we find, really interestingly enough, is that most people think they have a technology problem. But in truth, applying this and everything we've shared with you so far and what we're going to share with you going forward, I encourage you to bring it to your organization, because you have to change culture and organization. You're not alone, by the way. I just want to share with you. 83% say organizational silos limit our ability to execute our digital strategy. 53% say culture limits our ability to deliver our digital strategy. And even 60% say we do not have the right skill sets to deliver on our digital strategy. Now, when we looked at the data that we did with Revionics, the work we did with Revionics, this became uber clear in our evaluation of why or why not they investing in AI, for example, right? The reasons they had very much aligned with organization, cultural, and skill set challenges, right? Why aren't you investing? 1 out of 3 said because of organizational change. We're not ready for that, right? 26% say their fear of customer poor satisfaction if they knew we had data science. Well, we've shown you that doesn't matter. That's a cultural problem. Lack of executive sponsorship, that's a cultural problem. And again, below, identifying, understanding business cases, these are all skill sets that your organization doesn't have. So think about that. Think about the fact that there's many parts and pieces of what I've shown you so far and what Cheryl's about to show you that actually is going to be a problem. Don't forget about metrics either. We do not have the right metrics in place to measure the success of our digital strategy. Half of organizations say that. So you remember that little checklist box I showed you earlier? It needs to look like this, okay? I promise you, if you start with technology, you can do that in tandem, but you have to be addressing culture, organization metrics at the same time, or you're not going to get the results that you want. You need to optimize your solutions, optimize strategy, and that's about educating the organization on the kind of company you need to be. Now, I'm going to hand this over to Cheryl here now. I want to thank you for your time. I'm going to be around for Q&A too. Looking forward to the conversation going forward. Cheryl?
Thank you, Brendan. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and to be able to discuss the results of the latest Forrester study with you this morning. But I also want to help you operationalize that, remove some of the mystery around some of the science that Brendan talked about so passionately. But I thought I would first start with, who are we? We've been around for a really long time. We've been around for over a decade. We were the pioneers in applying AI machine learning. So, it's been around for a long time. It's been around since the 1950s. But there's been a lot of things that's not, made it a priority or not be able to work. Technology needed to get there at a certain level. Data wasn't as vast as it is today. I could go on for about 20 minutes on that. But in reality, it's been in pricing for quite some time. We've been in pricing for quite some time. Our models have been learning for over a decade. We've done hundreds of implementations. It is organic, meaning we didn't try to retrofit something into a SaaS model. We really built it when SaaS wasn't a cool thing. We've been very successful. We are leaders in the market. We attribute that to our people, our partnership philosophy, and we are very global. So we're very proud of that. We're also proud of this standing. So we've made the RIS leaderboard for over 5 years. We're expecting to make it again next year. This was 2017. But the things here that we're extremely proud of is, total cost of ownership. Like this should not put somebody in the red. Return on investment. It's proven. It delivers on it. But more importantly, it's the customer satisfaction. It's the fact that we're highly recommended. And we take a lot of pride in our support and quality, and it's recognized by our customers who are actually interviewed for this as well as other vendors' customers. The study, the presentation, we have done a series of these with Forrester. Some of the earlier ones, really focus on the shopper side of the equation. We sense some disconnect growing between retailers and shoppers. It was evident in the data that we were seeing. So rather than tell you, this is this study, this is that study, just realize that it's across a number of studies. This latest study, which, by the way, hasn't even been published, so this is the first time any of this is hitting the market, really focused on the retailer side of the equation, and the goal was, let's now bring the two together, which Brian started to talk about already. So again, my focus is, I'm not going to go deep into the study. I will show some things that Brian didn't share, but just maybe summarize out a little bit. I really want to focus on what can be done about it. Like it's great that you've got to do these things, but how do I do it? And remove some of the mystery around AI. What is that? Brian talked about the fact that a lot of retailers are trying to figure that out, and it is probably the most popular buzzword in the market. But what does it really mean, and how does it work? I'm not a scientist. Can you talk to me? So we'll focus a little there. The disconnects, are significant. Like, these are huge gaps, and price matching, which is still very rampant in the market. This strong belief that you've got to give them the lowest price when they don't, over 4 times of a gap here. And that, retailers having that strong belief that, shoppers are very patient. And as Brian pointed out, they're not very patient. And if I go a little deeper on price matching, it's really worse than the 17%, because when you look at that at the global level and compare it to, kind of the shoppers, what they're saying at that global level, 4% in Germany, 8% in the UK, 9% in the US. That 17% was really a little skewed by Brazil, to be honest. So 18 times gaps, 9 times 8 gaps. This is really a problem. So let's go into promotional waste. Mike says I'm very passionate about this. I am very passionate about this. I'm also very passionate about the waste just at the everyday price. But this one drives me crazy, because when we ask shoppers, would you be, what you're getting these promotions, how many of you would have paid full price? And there was 52% that said they would really pay full price, and 47% that said that I don't even use these. So despite the fact that retailers are saying that they are able to figure this out, they're not. And the shoppers have made this really clear. So they really do take a blind eye when it comes to this waste. So 73% said, it has a positive impact, so I don't care that I'm spending all this margin on it. Only 28% of shoppers says it has any sort of positive impact. And what was really interesting is when we looked at this across the different size of retailers, the most naive really were the 400 million to just under $1 billion. Like 95%, really think it's having this wonderful positive effect on their shoppers, and it's really not. Flipping the coin a little bit, it's one thing to say, well, is it positive? Then the other is, how angry do you get? and they get very annoyed. Some say they'll shop you less often, and that too varies across the different geographies. So you can see France here just really jumps out from the global average. So it's not a matter of, I think it's going to have some great effect on them. They're going to be very happy. I'm willing to give it that margin. It's like you're giving up margin for nothing. You're giving up margin to push your customer out the door. So it's not just I'm promoting, but they're smart. Like they want. Are you promoting the right discount? And is it a discount? Is it a % off? Or should it be a coupon? Or should it be $1 off? And what was really interesting here is BOGOs. So BOGOs have been getting a lot of attention. I've seen blogs out there stating about how great they are for retailers. But are they really? 30% of shoppers say that they even redeem them. If I take it down into the different types of BOGOs, so our solution supports a zillion different promotional types because retailers really think they need those. But what are they? Are they really working? Because the data is saying they don't. So, 15% of shoppers really say they'll redeem the buy one, get one. 66% of retailers say that they will. But what's really interesting is when you get into these deviations. Well, buy this and I'll give you that, or buy this one and I'll give you an X% off of, the next one or on something else. Shoppers do not like that. And if I take that, down a level, and look at it by category, there are some categories, that are more significant than others when it comes to BOGOs. For example, household goods, grocery, beauty, healthcare, those kind of make sense, but the numbers are still very, very small. You get into these others, you're just wasting your time. So how do you know? How are you targeting shoppers? And, you may know that this person needs a promotion to get them to bite, but what product is that on? What's the type of promotional offer you should give? And where should you put it? How are you reaching them? Are you reaching them in an ad, in a circular? Where within that, circular or in cap or website are you doing it? So, it's really impossible today. Retailers had long lead times, to get these promotions out the door. They had long lead times. Everything worked nicely together. Every 6 months I'd restock my shelf. I'd, redo my pricing. All of that got done. It doesn't work like that anymore. It's continuous. There is none of and the lead times aren't there, and the data is overabundant. And so how do you do it? If you take a simple ad, and say 50,000 SKUs would require 6 times 10 to the 3600 power of calculations to stimulate all those possible available options that could give you, that financial and strategic objective you're looking at. To put that in perspective, 10 to the 80th power of atoms is what's in the universe. So, back to Brian's comment about, I can't give them all those answers. I tell them what I know. Well, today, there's not a whole lot that unless you have some type of support. This is an example. Just to kind of drive home that the promotional problem is real. This is real data. We have, as we take on customers, we do leverage our science and kind of this fast win for them where we can apply it and help and analyze every single promotion that they've done for the prior year. And what is really astonishing is that 90% of the revenue, and this is very consistent, is coming from the top 30% of items, and so is 85% of profit. And then when you look at kind of that basket effect, a third of the revenue and half of the profit is coming from, that halo that demand transference. Yet when you take these promotions that maybe you got lucky and they did work, but you take all the ones that didn't, all that margin you gave up because you didn't get the right offer, you didn't get it to the right people in the right way, they cancel each other out. So it was astonishing where, one retailer in particular, a very large specialty retailer, was able to identify $60 million by doing nothing but stopping some stuff. Not go do this, go do that. It's just don't do this. And this is kind of an example that I'll share. So this is an actual screenshot. Comes from, our solution. And basically this was just kind of give you a view of how it can look across all these things. And just, number 4 there, stop doing this. Whether you want to look at it across everything, a particular category, a product segment, whatever you want. But science today can help you, and it doesn't take months and months and months to get some of these values. The other thing is, the study did, showed a lot of gaps, but it did show a lot of areas of agreement. And so I wanted to point those out too. And, one of that area is high frequency pricing. I'm okay. Both the retailer and the shopper. The retailer says, I think it would positively impact my shoppers. Shoppers say, hey, yeah, I'm good with that as long as it can give me that fair price. And, the science, they completely agree. And that was really exciting to see, because there has been this period in the market where retailers have been, really scared about that. We've had dynamic pricing, one of the first to bring it to market, but retailers were scared of that because they thought, what will my shoppers think? What will my shoppers say? They will be very upset at me. Well, no, they won't. In fact, they actually trust the science more than you because they don't like arbitrary pricing. So, you're bleeding margins, and it doesn't have to be that way. Give up that race to the bottom. Shoppers don't respond to that. Don't assume that they're impatient. You have time, but you still have to move in this dynamic world, and it's more important to do that and leverage science to help you come up with that fair price or discount versus having your shoppers leave you. The law of supply and demand, today's world is challenging that. As Brian pointed out, you don't get away with, hey, limited availability, let me raise my prices, because you know what? They don't respond. You're doing nothing but losing customers to a competitor or delayed or, sales, and the shoppers are telling them that. And it's not about the lowest price. So many of them, and I think that's where the price matching mentality comes in, is just get that lowest price. Well, it's not. They've said over and over and over again, I want a fair, but a non-arbitrary price. And, don't promote to promote, get it right. You don't, their retailers are over promoting. And I think Brian also pointed that out. Some of them don't know what to do. We see two types. We see those that are like, oh my God, I just got to throw some promotions out there. I just got to match my competitor or I'm going to die. And then you have the others that are like paralyzed, but I don't know what to do, so I'll just repeat last year. And both of those strategies just do not work. And in today's omni-channel world, the ways that retailers reach shoppers, has become more vast. They're also very expensive. It costs money to do an ad. It costs money, to get end caps in stores. It costs money to change my website. It costs. The cost for marketers are going way up. You don't have the luxury of just sticking it anywhere, And the nice thing is science can actually help with this. So, we talked a lot about this, but I'm sure it leaves a lot of questions. So how can I determine a fair price? What the heck is that? How can I determine the right offer, without jeopardizing my margins? If this guy wants 40, I can't give 40% off on everything. How do I know those vehicles? I get that it's got to be in the right place, the right combination. I may not even need them all, but how do I figure that out? And what is dynamic pricing? A lot of confusion. I still see a lot of confusion. And then it begs to ask, if shoppers are patient, why do I need it? Is it for online only? What is AI? How does it work? I'm not a scientist. I'm still confused. And then how do you build that business case? One of the things that was interesting in the study was that being one of the big concerns is that business case. And what role can my suppliers play in this? Especially in the promotional world, they give me money. They kind of direct me where they want to go. But how can I leverage them? How can I turn them in a better direction? And am I really behind the game on offering one-to-one promotions? I still believe retailers, there's a difference between personalizing promotions and one-to-one promotions. So personalizing promotions, a lot of folks misinterpret that with, did I say the right things? Is it, am I talking their language? Does this make sense to them? Is it the right product? And they miss the mark when it comes to, is it the right offer? Is it the right price? Did you give them a BOGO? Did you give them a percent off? Is it the right level? How does that tie back to your promotional plan? So what is AI, ML? So machine learning is a set of tools and techniques that is a part of the AI world. And so what does it bring to the table? It does determine that fair price, and it does determine shopper price sensitivities, and I'm going to actually talk about that. It can also determine competitive response. Often retailers think that I've got 100 competitors. Well, you don't really. You may have 100 competitors, but they're not the competitor that is going to impact your demand on an item. So it's very important, science can help with that. They can understand, who your true competitors are and which ones are truly influencing your demand, and how does the shopper price sensitivity and that come together to give you that right price. It's not just science. There's a million rules. You have price families, you have good, better, best relationships, you have promotional groups. There's so many different rules, and how do I ensure I'm applying the best rules? And it's also got to adhere to those rules. It's not about, often retailers just think it's this product and this is what it's going to do. They're blind to the fact of the impact of the basket. Are the promotions you're thinking is going to, giving away some margin here, but what is it doing for you? Is it really growing the basket, or is it cannibalizing? Back to my point earlier, the market is shifting dynamically. The science can be dynamic. It's also about determining an optimal strategy. So, a lot of times technology only works as good as the strategies you blind them to. But guess what? It can also help you understand if it's time to change your strategies. Do you have the right strategy? What strategies are going to produce the best results for you? And what we see is a lot of retailers really moving to that area, especially in our solutions. They move over to spend a lot of time modeling the strategies and optimizing and predicting, what would happen, can I make this margin enhancing, or could this one, be more revenue generator, so they spend their time there. They don't spend their time like, well, do I like this recommendation or not? Or, and many have literally gone to the dynamic world where it's just, hands off, let it go, but stay within guardrails. So it's prescriptive. It used to be, analyzed, and it was, forecast, and then it was, kind of predict, and then it became to prescribe, recommend and prescribe. Here's what you need to do. It learned, so there is a lot to be said about it being able to learn over time. So finding the win-win. What is that fair price? That fair price, it can be determined by science. So to make it clear, shoppers are price sensitive. There is no doubt about it, but they're not price sensitive on every single item in your assortment. So it's important to understand which items they are and which items they aren't. So here's how price elasticity works. Price elasticity of 1 says it's kind of right there in the middle. But when it starts to move over and increase, so price elasticity of 1 means 10% increase in price gets a 10% decrease in price. But when you start to move over, a PE of 1 is considered middle ground, but when you move over, when it rises, move over one slide, when it rises, it indicates that shoppers are more price sensitive on those items. And a PE of 2 would mean a decrease in price would result in twice the demand. These are typically candidates for price reduction and a more competitive strategy. It also means that, should I have a screen here? It also means that a PE of 2 to 3 is considered very high, and often also retailers' real KPIs and items that will form the price image of you. So I'm having a little difficulty here in being able to move the slides. Okay, here we go. All right. I'm going to move a little fast here. So I talked about the right vehicle mix. Science can do that. It can recommend the offer. It can recommend the product you should be promoting, where you should put it. Clarity on dynamic pricing. It's about the right frequency. It's not about changing prices every 3 minutes. It's about changing the price when it's necessary. Is it time because of a market shift or a competitive shift or some kind of shift in the market that it needs to be changed to maintain that optimal price? So it really is looking at all those factors and then determining what frequency that should be. It's not just for online, to make that clear. There are retailers today that are implementing and have implemented ESLs that are doing dynamic pricing in their stores, including grocery. So I'll make that clear. Retailers are investing. Brian talked about this. Don't be left behind. And it's not just Forrester saying this. Constellation, RSR, I could have filled this slide up with different types of industry experts. The self-funding implementation, it can be a crawl, walk, run. You can start with even what I highlighted earlier, which was, let's just get your promotions right, and then we'll start recommending what you need to do forward. Maybe just start with rules-based pricing. It is a self-funding model. We have many retailers that start simple, they reap the results of that, and they use it to invest into the next stage. So, it is a good way to build your business case, go at your own pace. We have some that go from 0 to 100. We have some that go slow, and they, bite off another step and another step until they, have a full life cycle going, from rules to optimization. It is important to choose the right partner. Look at the market. Look for folks who have years of success. Look at their renewal rates. Talk to those customers. Find out how long they've been with them. Find out why they've stayed with them. Make sure the company is strong. Are they new and are they growing? Are they established? Make sure that they're solid. Look at their investment. Are they ongoing investment? Are they the ones that first to come out with that innovation? Look for people who have been doing this for a really long time. They have the deep science background, but also has deep retail background and understands your pain points. Look for the science. Like I said, it's a toolbox. Excel is a tool. But what kind of model you build in it and how you use that to answer which business questions is up to the person. So look for people who have proven results, whose models have learned and been able to be tweaked and matured over time. And then I'll leave you with, and I apologize, I don't have much time for questions. It's only as good as people behind it. In a nutshell, tons of artificial intelligence, been around since the 1950s. Only as good as the people behind it, and go with things that are proven. And with that, we are having our retail conference here in Chicago, and folks on this call are invited to attend. I encourage you to attend. There will be hundreds of retailers there that you can talk to firsthand who have gone down this journey, tons of pricing experts. If you are interested in doing that, please reach out to us, and we will make sure that you get registered. And then lastly, we always like to hear from you on these webinars. We try to learn from them. If you'll take our survey, we'll be happy to give you a Starbucks gift card. Who doesn't like Starbucks, right? And with that, I thank you for your time, and I apologize for lack of time for questions, and I'm going to give it back to Mike.
Oh, thank you, Cheryl, and thank you also, Brendan. This is the depth of information is amazing here. There's so much stuff going on. I can see why you need a 3-day event focused just on all of the different dynamics here. And having been to the event last year when it was in Austin, I would encourage people who are listening, it's a worthy investment of your time if you can make it. There are a few questions. I think we can take those if you want. I mean, we're up against the hour, but if people want to hang out, we can go through them. What do you think, Cheryl?
I can absolutely stay on. I'm not sure about Brent.
Of course. Yeah.
All right.
Happy to.
All right. So, yeah, we can kind of rip through these pretty quick, but here's the first one. I understand the shopper price elasticity, but how does the science work to understand the competitor? So what if the shopper is not elastic, but let's say I have 30 competitors?
Is that for me?
Either one of you, whoever would like to handle that.
Okay, I'll give my 2 cents, and Brendan, you can jump in. So as I mentioned earlier, it is about understanding who your competitors are. You know, if you're competing against the wrong competitor, you're really going to get in trouble. So this is an area where the science can help you. As I mentioned, it can figure out which ones are truly impacting your demand. Often we have, like I mentioned, we have retailers that come to us and they think they have 100 online retailers, and it's really not. In many cases, it can drop to 5 or 6. And a lot of times, Amazon isn't their biggest competitor. And there's other things, too, about indexing against different competitors, about, you know, taking in consideration, you know, maybe the Nielsen data around modal, you know, the most common price. Like, there's a lot of information that can be absorbed to help ensure that you are bringing that proper competitive strategy and that the science is aligned to it. And like I said, the price sensitivities can also highlight where shoppers are more price sensitive, and typically those are on the more well-known products, the ones that typically need that higher competitive strategy.
Yeah, and I'll just add a little bit of color. I would say this question I love because it gets to the core of what I mentioned earlier, that you're not going to be able to do this without some data science behind it, without some AI and some learning, because you have to understand price in the context of the value you offer. It's not always the lowest price, as we showed earlier, that's going to win. So what is the right price? What is the right price against your competitors? As Cheryl pointed out, most of the time you'll find it isn't just 30, it isn't 30, it's 5, it's 2 or 3. It's really the consideration set is very little. But on top of that, you know, as a individual in an organization, you're not going to understand the mindset and behavior of the customers, because I know your jobs. I've done your jobs, right? I've been there. I've been in that space, and I know that you're just trying to get your job done. You know, you don't have time to sit there and look at massive charts and Excel spreadsheets and trying to figure out the nuances of elasticity of your customers and things like that. You don't, you know, that's not part of your annual review. So leave that to other people, and, you know, become an expert at using the tools that are out there rather than an expert on elasticity of pricing.
Leave it to AI. So second question, AI has been around a long time, as you noted, Cheryl, since the 50s. I think you might have touched on this some also, but why has it taken retailers so long to take advantage of it?
I can jump in real quick first, Cheryl, just real quick, because it's kind of directly at the question I said, is that a lot of them have not really understood the business case for these things. And, you know, the other thing I want to point out is just with all things, e-commerce, cloud computing, big data, it doesn't really matter. Everything goes through an evolution. Everything, right? And it takes longer than we think. The internet's been out there much longer than we think, right? Big data has been out there longer than we think. E-commerce was kind of quick. But the idea is that while this has been around for a long time, the application of business has been a while. And in fact, a lot of times AI gets used operationally before it gets used for business users. So we see this with cloud computing. While everybody's really on the cloud now, Cheryl pointed out they were a leader in this space, or a first-timer or a leader into getting into cloud. But operationally, IT was already in the cloud for 10, 15 years before business users got into it. So I think part of it is AI is now reaching the business user community, even though it's been utilized in the back end for many, many years. But Cheryl?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And what I would add is that it's more than science. And I think it kind of, the approach went to market, you know, we kind of say the earlier solutions, they went to market from a science point of view and not a business point of view and an application side of point of view. It's not just about, here's the elasticity of this item. Like, I'm not a scientist. How do I use that? Okay, you're giving me answers, but how do you come up with that? So there's so many problems. When it first hit, you know, everybody was screaming, yay, 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 until they realized, you know, the science isn't productized. Hey, I didn't know I have to bring somebody back in to fix these models. Hey, I don't know where this price comes from, therefore I don't trust it. You know, there were so many hurdles that it kind of gave a black eye, to be honest. And so that had to be overcome. You know, the other is, you know, technology itself, you know, kind of the application side. You know, you get into promotions, for example. Oh my God, that is a very complex process that goes across tons of different functional groups within an organization. Marketing, you know, merchandising, supply chain, even finance likes to get involved. You know, so how do you take something so complex and make it simple? I talked about how many different promotional types. I don't have those time limits, so how do I take something very complex? Well, you can't do that unless you've got a very solid solution on top of that science.
Okay, very good. As a reminder, I need to bring this to a close here because we're over our time limit. We're customer obsessed at Retail Leader, but we do have a limit. So I know we could probably go on all afternoon talking about pricing and promotional effectiveness and promotional waste, etc. Please take the survey, win a gift card. If you'd like the deck, reach out to Cheryl C. Sullivan at Revionics.com and check out the event in Chicago. And with that, thank you again, Brendan and Cheryl, and have a nice afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.